Y'all planning for this?
Welcome back, TPR Nation. This is Jamie Shalansky in an episode of Worlds to Conquer, and today is going to be a super fun episode because we are going to be talking about what happens when goes wrong in your office. As part of the Perfect RIA Nation, you know that the Perfect RIA is committed to the pursuit of perfection. We are not perfect. We are not infallible. We are in the quest to deliver massive value, spend more time with our families outside of the office, and be highly profitable in the process. And when that happens, when you are pushing hard enough for you and your team members, things are going to go wrong. Things are going to get off of the track. So today, by the end of this conversation between you and I'm going to give you the skill set to knowing exactly what to do when goes wrong in your office, whether you're a solo practitioner or especially if you're an enterprise office like Shalansky and Associates, and how to get that train back on the track to be most effective. One of the biggest mistakes that I see business owners make in every line of business is once they start onboarding team members, once they start bringing people into the fold and they do very minimal training with them, they then quote unquote trust that person to do the job effectively as if it was them themselves doing it. Nobody is ever going to run your book of business like you would. Nobody's ever going to run your business like you would. And that means you have to be really articulate about what your expectations are and trust your gut. So many times, business owners have come to me and said, hey, we've got this big time crisis now. And I said, great, how long has it been going on? And then when we start dissecting the root of the problem, we start looking for all these little infractions, it comes back to that business owner having known weeks or months ago that something was building up to this now cataclysmic event in which their mode of operations is being jeopardized. As a business owner, as an entrepreneur, as a leader in your organization, you must trust your instincts. If you're worried, if you're fretting that things are going wrong, they probably are. That intuition should not be ignored. And what is the worst that's going to happen? You bring together your team members, whether it's one person or it's a dozen people, and you say, great, this is what I'm concerned about. You guys tell me where you're at with X, Y, and Z so that I can just check this off my mental worry list and make sure that you guys are doing what needs to be done. What is the very worst thing that's going to happen in that conversation? The very worst thing is you were wrong. You are wrong, and your team does have everything handled, and they are doing things that you explicitly told them to do. Now, when I have this meeting with team members, I do not bring together 15 people in a room and say, listen, I think you guys are doing a job, and I really am scared that you're going to ruin my entire business because I don't trust you to do the things that we talked about you doing. No, that's not how the conversation goes at all, regardless of how I'm feeling. Instead, I go in there as a humble leader and I say, hey, listen, I've been really worried lately and I've got these little doubts and fears and insecurities building up in me as your leader. And could you just help me put these to rest? Could you just help dispel them so that I can sleep better at night? And guess what my team is going to do? They're going to be like, absolutely, Jamie, what can we do to help you? Because I'm always there to help them. So in turn, they will tell me, I say, hey, great, listen, I'm worried about prospects. We had 100 prospects come in through the top of our funnel, which is our major marketing efforts, and they all requested appointments, but I only see 25 on the schedule. Can somebody please walk me through what the process is and what's being done? And then they have a choice. They can show me, not just tell me, I want to see what our written processes are. Now, the beautiful thing about Micah and I designing Infinity is that we created all of these funnels so we could see when people came in at the top. We can see when they request an appointment. We can see where the breakdown between requesting appointment and meeting with the advisor actually happens in our office. We can see which stages that they are getting stuck on. Are they getting stuck on the return phone call? Are they getting stuck on filling filling out the information? Are they choosing not to pay for the appointment because we charge for initial consultations? Where is the breakdown happening? And then that helps me as a leader identify system flaws that we can now remedy. So what is your written down process? So when I talk to the team and I bring them together and I say, guys, listen, I've just got some concerns. I got some worries. I want you to walk me through it and dispel most of these. They're going to rise to that occasion. They're going to show me what they're actively doing. And then that's going to allow me as the business owner to look at the model and say, okay, listen, this is what we need to tweak. This is what we need coaching on. This is what we need training on. What is the problem between what I am worried about and the actuality of things happening? The worst thing that happens in that meeting is they say, hey, listen, Jamie, we've got this. Everything's under control. We're doing everything as you asked us to do, all set. And I said, great. Thank you guys so much. I don't look weak. I don't look like I don't know what's going on. I look like a normal human being that is concerned that things aren't happening because they're not the ones always controlling the things that need to get done. So I check my ego. I ask the questions that need to be asked, and then I help the team members that need the extra help to make sure we're delivering on results. So when's the last time that you've taken some of those intuition feelings, wrote them down on a piece of paper, and address that dread with your team and say, listen, I really feel like we're not on track, or I really feel like we're missing the mark. Help me understand where we're at, what you're doing, and how do we do things. Now, when things are going wrong. Now, oftentimes, most business owners ignore that feeling because we don't want to micromanage and we don't want to get into people's business and we don't want to not come across like we don't trust that individual to do their job. I don't care. I don't care. I tell all my team members, I'm so controlling. I'm sorry. It's me. It's not you, but you're going to have to help me walk through those things with me. And team members respond to that. They understand. They say, yeah, no problem. You need to know what's going on. Here's where we're at every step of the way. And if they can't tell me, if they aren't willing to go down that road with me, if they aren't willing to meet me in the middle and see me as the leader that I am, then they're the wrong team member for my team. And that's okay. There are amazing leaders out there. Go find the one that suits your communication style. But when things get off of the track, when it's completely derailed and something is brought to our attention that maybe we weren't listening, so two things can happen. We ignored our intuition, or we didn't go looking and asking the questions because we assumed everything was being done correctly. That's when things are going to get off track. That's when we're going to be completely derailed. And now we have to go into the tool set of how do we stop this from happening? How do we develop a plan? I call it a war game. So we sit down and we strategize what needs to happen immediately. The very first step that we take is we triage. Now, this is an area in conflict that I deal with a lot of other leaders because the second I begin to triage, they say, Jamie, you're treating the symptom and not the underlying condition. Stop. I know. I understand that. But unless that blood stops gushing from the wound, I cannot fix the artery. It will not happen. So what are you doing to triage? The very first thing that you need to do is you need to get your team members together, everyone that was involved in it, and you need to sit down and say, okay, what is the problem? And this is a really important step because oftentimes we talk at what we think the problem is, and we don't identify what is the problem. The problem should be written down in one proper sentence. And if you can't write the problem down in one proper sentence, then you don't know what the real problem is. And this is important to go through with the members that you consider the leads on your team, because you'll ask, what is the problem? And they'll start giving you all of the excuses that led to the point of where you are today. That's not the question. That's not what's being asked. What is the problem? What is the problem? Ask it over and over, because once you identify that problem, once you've isolate what it is, now you can start problem solving. So if the problem is that clients forgot about doing Roth conversions in April of the former year because they chose to do it in April instead of October, and now it's tax time April this year, and they're really upset because their CPA told them, geez, if your financial advisor hadn't have done this Roth conversion, you wouldn't have owed $10,000 in taxes, but because they did, you now have to pay the IRS $10,000. What is the problem? The problem is the client feels that they were given an excessive tax bill because you did not articulate the value of doing the Roth conversion for their lifetime tax plan. Okay, great. Now we've identified what the problem is. Step number one in the triage process, be accountable. Jump on the grenade. Cut off the blood flow. Figure out what it is to stop that emergency immediately. So when you triage, that means picking up the phone, not responding by email, especially if you have a client that's on the fence, or maybe a vendor that's on the fence, or a team member that's on the fence. Do not email, do not text, do not chat. Use your phone device to pick up the phone and have a verbal conversation. Written communication has become so easy to substitute for really communicating with individuals. It's easy to send a text because then you can edit and rewrite it and hopefully send it out when you think it's absolutely perfect. But guess what? So is the recipient. There is strength and courage and accountability of picking up the phone, identifying what the problem is, and fall on your sword when you need to fall on it. If you were in the wrong, how do you admit wrong and then deliver so much value to that person that they understand by the end of the conversation how much esteem and respect that they have for you, because you are human, you are fallible, you are willing to identify the immediate problem and come up with an amiable solution for both of you. Now, one hard rule that I have for my team members: when something goes wrong and they've made a mistake, they must pump the brakes. They must stop. They cannot be the ones to jump in and try to make everything better. They have to give it a cooling off period. So when I say that it's important to triage and jump on the grenade and make sure that you're the one identifying these problems, do not make it worse. I'm speaking to you as the entrepreneur, as the financial advisor, as the leader of your organization. You have the responsibility to triage, but you must set the tone with your team members that just because somebody has a gash in their arm doesn't mean you cut off the entire appendage, because sometimes when they're trying to help, that is the consequence of what will happen. That is what is going to take place. In the effort to make everything better, they will make things catastrophically worse for everyone. So I love to get a pause on this one. Just because we're identifying a problem, just because we're doing triage, doesn't mean we take swift and immediate action. If there is no gun to your head, can you pause? Can you stop? Can you wait a second? Can you go outside, walk around, give yourself a little perspective before you come back and address the emergency? This is a pro tip. If you receive a client complaint in a letter or an email, do not immediately jump on that one. Rather, step back, collaborate, give yourself some distance from that complaint so that you don't jump in and make things worse for yourself. It is amazing how many times that we have the skill set and knowledge, but anytime something goes awry or we're feeling uncomfortable or there's a problem, we're automatically jumping on it and making things worse instead of just pausing and giving yourself a moment for a little bit of perspective, a little bit of distance from the problem so that you can problem solve and make sure that you're moving forward in the best possible way. So those are my rules around triage. If it is me, I'm giving myself time, distance to gain perspective, to make sure that I'm thinking things through before I just jump on something necessarily. If it is my team member, they are required to pump the brakes. They are required to raise a hand, ask for help, and stop taking action, because normally it will just be so much more damaging than if they had just paused and talked to me and then we got back to it once we both had a little time and distance from the problem. So when you triage, what is the emergency? What is the problem? What wound do you need to stop bleeding? And then the second step is now we need to go into what are the symptoms and what are the underlying conditions, because most of the time our frustrations are the symptoms. We're expressing frustration because this didn't happen, this didn't happen, this didn't happen. Okay, great. What are the underlying conditions that made those things not occur? So in our example, we talked about clients having Roth conversions and getting frustrated in April. All right, the frustration is a symptom. What was the underlying condition? The underlying condition is that they got a $10,000 tax bill and their CPA didn't just run over you, they honked and backed that party bus up and rolled back and forth over your body to lay you out to dry. So how do you solve that? How do you solve that before it becomes a problem? You get out in front of it. So in January, are you sending a 1099 letter? In February, are you sending a Roth conversion letter that says, Mr. and Mrs. Client, you may remember that part of what we did last year was develop a 10-year tax strategy. When we were developing that 10-year tax strategy, we decided that instead of you paying ordinary income taxes, you would like to have most of your retirement dollars tax-free. In order for us to get there every single year, we need to convert X amount of dollars from your deferred qualified plan to your Roth IRA. We agreed that paying the taxes that we know are going to happen today was better than paying what we think they might be in the next 10 years. In order to satisfy this tax bill, don't worry, we've already have cash available in this account, and this is how you're going to pay for it. Symptoms and underlying conditions. You've got to be able to isolate both. So we worked through the triage, we stopped the emergency, we did the steps that we needed to take to no longer make it an emergency. And then now we have to revisit. I love T-charts on a scratch sheet of paper. Sometimes if I'm working with the team, I'll throw up a giant 3M Post-it note, we'll bust out a T-chart and say symptoms, underlying conditions. So once they identify all of the symptoms, I can now go into problem solving mode and create a diagnosis for whatever underlying condition or disease is rampaging through their body. And I love to do this together with the team. I love to say, great, I feel like this is a problem for you. And they say, yes, it is, because I don't know what to tell the client. Or I think the client is frustrated. Or I think the CPA is doing X, Y, and Z. Okay, great. This is the symptom. Now let's both treat it together. If I was to do this, would this be a benefit with you? Would you feel that you had something to rely back on? So in our scenario, if the client calls the office and tells a team member, I'm super frustrated, got a $10,000 tax bill, my CPA said it's your fault as the financial advisory firm, then our team members are empowered to be able to be like, great, Mr. and Mrs. Client, I believe that was due to the Roth conversion that you did last year. These are operations team members. Don't worry, we withheld 20% and we sent it to the IRS directly as per your instructions and in accordance with your 10-year tax plan. If you have additional questions around this, would you like to talk to your advisor? Or you may remember we sent out a letter to you earlier this year, and we can upload that to your secured box.com account. And then if the client needs to escalate to the financial advisor and get on the calendar, then we have a great conversation with them. And we say, Mr. and Mrs. Client, most CPAs are historians. They're looking back. They're looking at last year's taxes, maybe the year before at most. But lucky for you, you have looked forward. You are forward thinking. You have created a 10-year tax plan. And as part of that tax plan, we agreed that getting the most amount of money into a tax-free account as soon as possible was going to be the best course of action for you and your family. That means we're going to pay the amount that we know taxes are today, and our money that we put inside the Roth is going to be tax-free, as are the earnings when you go to withdraw it in the future. Oh, of course, Mr. and Mrs. Client, I forgot to mention that Roths aren't subject to required minimum distributions. So when you turn 70 plus, you're not going to be required to take those funds out of the account. Symptoms and underlying conditions. All those symptoms and the underlying conditions should come back down to a process. And oftentimes what I find is that when things go wrong, when things get off at the track, it's because you didn't have a process in place for delivering massive value. You didn't have a strategy behind what you were doing, and you didn't convey that properly to the client. Now, does that mean just because we do it one time in October that the client is going to completely remember that for the next tax season? Absolutely not. Oftentimes they do, but sometimes we got to have that second conversation. That's one of the reasons we love doing surge during tax time, because we say, oh, by the way, Mr. and Mrs. Client, you might remember we did that Roth conversion last year. Here's how much you owe in taxes. This is what our estimate was, and this is how we're going to pay for it. What are your systems? What are your policies? What are your processes? Because oftentimes we have crises present themselves because we aren't following a system, we aren't following a policy, and we don't have a process built around what what we're trying to accomplish. If you are a Backstage Pass or Invictus member, you know that you have access to see all of our blueprints and our processes. So remember, a task is a one-time action by one individual. A process is multiple actions that can be by multiple individuals. And a blueprint is going to be an if this, then that statement. If you don't know where to start in your office, make a list of the most common actions that you guys take. I gave you Roth conversions. We went through several conversations about how we talk to clients and how we talk to CPAs and how we deliver that 10-year tax plan with a client. So are you doing a lot of Roth conversions for your client? Are you doing a lot of 401k transfers, 403b transfers? What are the most common actions that you are taking with your clients? And start there. Start developing a policy and a process behind that action and work your way down. Now, does everything need a policy, process, or blueprint? Depends. If it's a one-off item, probably not. That's just a task. A lot of our high touch items, whenever our relationship managers send out a high touch, that's a one-time thing, hopefully. Oftentimes that could be, we get a lot of snow in Alaska and a client has a roof that leaked, cracked, fell in their living room, and now they have a giant mess. We might send them a pre-cooked dinner that they could just eat that night. It's a high touch. It says, hey, I know you got a lot of stress going on in the next couple of days. We're going to be talking with you a lot about your insurance and freeing up cash to make sure that you get the remediation done on the house. But meanwhile, tonight, control what you can control, enjoy this meal, and know that we're going to be there tomorrow morning. That is a high touch task. That doesn't need a policy, process, or blueprint behind it. The policy is limited by the dollar amount, I should say, that we are allowed to gift clients on an annual basis. So we do have a policy for high touches that we have to be recorded. We have to know how much money was spent per household, etc. But we don't develop this huge, long process around doing a high touch of that caliber. Just like we don't develop a if this, then that around doing a high touch either. But if we have a 401k transfer because they changed their employers, that's going to be a if this, then that. Does the client want to transfer the account? Yes or no? And then we're going to go into several different steps of how that needs to happen from start to finish. When we finish the transfer, one of the very last steps that we take is we provide clients with a flow chart of where their assets went to, because for that next year, they might still get statements from their old custodian. And now they're confused between the old custodian and what it was called to the new custodian. And if you've worked with a client before and they keep referring to their IRA as their 401k, you know what I'm talking about. It used to be their 401k, now it is their IRA, and they still associate it as their 401k. So we like to do a flow chart that says, hey, especially if we're doing a new client onboarding with consolidation, that says this is how we're going to transfer all the accounts, this is where the balances are going to end up, and these are the statements you will receive moving forward. All right, so when I am looking at when things go wrong, was a system, a policy, or process broken? Did we not have something in place that would have mitigated this from becoming an emergency that we're dealing with now? And if not, great, fantastic. Now we know what the pain points are. Let's go carve out exactly what has to happen. Now, mind you, this is after the triage. So I've triaged, then I T-charted, and I want to know what the symptoms and what the underlying conditions are. And now I'm going to go create a system, policy, or process moving forward so that we don't end up in the same situation. Sometimes if you have a military background, you know this is called an after action report. One great saying, unfortunately, was the source, but it said the best made battle plans never survive first contact with the enemy. They just don't. So we can really try to have all these systems, policies, and processes ahead of time, but we don't know how they're going to go over until we start deploying them. One of the things that we do, especially for our Backstage Pass and our Invictus members, is that our value adds. We have 8 different value adds that we circulate throughout the years because they're constantly important to the client, but we're not delivering all 8 in one year. And we're also not delivering all 8 in one meeting. We are doing those rotationally, as is the theme of our surges. Our surges have themes. We spell out exactly what our value adds are going to be for the entire year. So that way all the team members have, 1, done them themselves, and then 2, are able to go through and articulate what they are. And then that way they're top of mind for all the financial advisors every single time we do a surge. And here at the Perfect RIA, before we ever let one of our members have one of our deliverables, one of our value adds that we have given, we take it through two surges. Sometimes we'll do a one-off surge if we have something come up. This year in 2023, we had a lot of bank defaults. So in the midst of our surge, that became the course topic that everyone wanted to talk about, was how secure was their money at banks, how secure was their money at credit unions, and how secure was it in the markets or custodians if you're using a lot of cash positions inside of brokerage accounts. So we had a lot of those conversations, and we instantly came up with a value add, and we make sure we send it out to all of our clients. Now, when we sent it out to all of our clients, that was our test run. That was us going through this process. So as we started to get feedback from clients on what it encompassed and what it didn't, one of the questions that was asked was, great, you told me how secure banks are, credit unions are, or are not, but you didn't mention anything about the custodian. How secure are my funds at? And so that was a great indication to go, okay, great, boom. Now we got to go back and we got to modify that. Because if we're going through and presenting this to 514-ish households, then we're going to get a lot of amazing feedback from our clients. And our clients are going to say, thank you. This confused me, or this did answer that. And we go through and we make those tweaks, we make those changes to that value add before our members get it. And then that way, when you're running it through to all of your clients, it's already been field tested. Does this mean it's bulletproof? Absolutely not. All clients are going to have questions and going to have some comments or some type of feedback. But this at least gives you an example of how it's been test run with real clients by real advisors in real meetings. So that way you have that as a template and backbone on how you move forward. Now, when I'm doing my after action report, this is not a blame session. Is it an accountability session? 100%. You are accountable if you broke a system, broke a policy, broke a process. If you did not follow the process and something went wrong, that is 100% on you, and that's a disciplinary action. But if something went wrong because there was no system, because there was no policy, there was no process for you to follow, or the process was unclear and unspecified, that's on me. That's not your fault. I failed you. And now I've got to correct that. Now I have to move forward with that. And so we like to do those after action reports to really allow an opportunity for all of us to be accountable and say, how do we get better? How do we make sure we don't end up in the same situation next tax year? How do we continue to improve? Because the perfect RA is about the pursuit of perfection. We are always looking to improve. We are always looking to level up and collaborate and be transparent and work with other financial advisors that don't just talk about what they think it's like to be a financial advisor, but actually are financial advisors sitting through with clients when there's insecurities in the market, there's bank defaults happening across the globe, and clients want to know, how does this impact me? You will never, ever tell your client more than Google can possibly tell them. They will quickly fact check you. They will quickly read their online articles. They will have all the news sources from all over the globe instantaneously available at their fingertips. But what search engines and the internet cannot do, and only you as the financial advisor can, is tell them how this information impacts them directly. That is what clients care about. Yes, all this stuff in the world is going on, and that is horrific to happen to other people. How does this impact me? What does this mean to me? That is the question that they are coming to you as their trusted financial advisor to make sure you're answering. So when goes wrong, and it will absolutely go wrong. Things will get off the track. And the second you get sloppy, the second you get comfortable, the second you don't think you need to be checking up on things, that's when you're really going to get derailed. So we all talked about action items. You know that the Perfect RA is 100% about delivering you actionable steps that you can take right now. You can take these steps right now and revolutionize your RIA or your practice or your interaction with team members and create massive, massive value for your clientele. So the first action I want you to take, you need to triage. That's the step that you're going to take when things go wrong. What do you need to do? Pump the brakes. Inform your team members that if a complaint or a problem comes up, they are to pump those brakes. The vehicle comes to a screeching halt. They take no action until they have talked to you, and then you guys collaborate on it together. You stop impulsing control. So if you think that you are just a reactive, impulsive person and you get a problem or something, physically get up from your computer. Leave your phone behind so you don't get the nerve to download email, because I know it's not on your phone, and start trying to fix the problem. Give yourself perspective and distance from the problem. Get out, walk. Get the brain going, get moving, get problem solving, collaborate with other professionals who have been in similar situations, and then come back to the table. Triage first, stop the bleeding, and then start diagnosing. Second thing you need to do, get a giant 3M pad and let's start diagnosing all of the symptoms and the underlying conditions. Figure out what the root of the problem is and make sure that you're collaborating with your team so that you can solve it and make it preventable for the future. Third thing that you need to do is you need to create an after action report. What went wrong? How did it go wrong? Did somebody break a system, policy, or procedure? Or was something not clear? Was something not clear? And you as the owner, you as the financial advisor need to come back and specify for your team what those expectations are. These are really powerful tool sets for you to keep and be able to deploy when things will go wrong, because they do. They just do. You will never be able to predict how, when, or what will happen and go wrong in the future, but you can control how you're going to choose to react to those problems and how you're going to steward and lead your team through problem solving so that you can deliver massive value, spend more time outside of the office, and be highly profitable in the process. All right, TPR Nation, this has been an episode of Worlds to Conquer. I'm Jamie Shalansky. Go find people who share your values and change the world.
Hold on before we go. Something that you need to know. This isn't tax, legal, or investment advice. That isn't our intent. Information designed to change lives. Financial planning can make you thrive. Start today, don't think twice. Be a better husband, father, mother, and wife. The perfect RIA, the perfect RIA.